Hello and welcome to Ward Talk, CTN's look at the political scene in Ann Arbor. I'm your host, Bonnie Gabowitz. We'll be discussing issues and solutions with the city council members from our 5 wards each month. Joining us this month is Dharma Akmon from Ward 4. Welcome, it's a pleasure to see you. This is your first time on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to be here.
And you are one of our most recent council members to join the council. So I always like to start with what made you interested in being on the council and what experience and interest you to bring to us.
Yeah, happy to share that. So I've lived here for about 20 years. And in that time, I've become increasingly involved in things going on locally. First through volunteerism, later on became involved with the League of Women Voters, where I moderated candidate forums, and then I was elected to the Ann Arbor District Library Board a little over 4 years ago. So I served that term. Of course, that got me more involved as a local official, very interested in housing issues, transportation issues. And so when this election came up, I decided to throw my hat in the ring and up my, elected service here.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start with talking about your Ward 4 in particular. I know a lot of what goes on in your ward also goes on throughout the city.
Sure.
But is there anything special you wanted to mention? I know we have several topics to go over, so it might interweave with what we're discussing.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of road construction that's about to start right now, as people have probably seen the downtown. And so similar to that, there's also construction projects going on in the 4th Ward. The biggest one is probably the Scioto Church Road Improvement Project.
Right.
And this is big because people have been waiting for it for a couple of years.
Right, and exactly what repair is being done?
Yeah, so it's a pretty major project, and this is between the area of 7th to Maple Street. There's a water main, replacement, complete surface replacement of the road. They're installing buffered bike lanes, enhanced crossings, and filling sidewalk gaps that exist at various points along the way.
And that street has actually had a history of needing repair. I recall in the past couple of years, there was also another big project where driving was interrupted.
Yeah, the other half of that. So the first part was, and I think it maybe been 7 years ago, but between 7th and Main Street. And so now this is doing the other part.
Right.
It's pretty disruptive because a lot of people take that route. So.
And what's the time period you expect it to be active?
So it just started a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, and it's going to go through August is what they're anticipating. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So pretty big.
All right. So we'll be prepared to detour.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Anything else in the ward in particular?
Well, there's a variety of sidewalk gaps that are getting filled on Ellsworth, as well as safer crossing at various points across the ward. Actually, one right across from these studios to the bus station. We also have some public engagement going around future road projects. So one is Greenview, which is close to where I live. It's a road that's in very poor condition that they want to rehabilitate. So they've started doing community engagement around that.
And let me just clarify what you mean by community engagement. That, to my understanding, is that you bring up a topic and ask the public what their points of view are or what their wishes are, and basically getting input.
Yeah, exactly. So they had a session a couple of weeks ago at the Pittsfield Library. Mm-hmm. They invited all of the residents that live within a certain distance of that street. And then come together and share their observations of things that they see going on that road. For example, speeding is a pretty big issue on that road that people brought up. And then talk about our transportation plan, and then people come up with ideas. And we had kind of a fun activity where staff created a table with different elements that people could add, like mini roundabouts or crosswalks. And people could play with those different devices to kind of, envision what they would like to see on the road.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a lot going on in the city. Some of these topics are ongoing, and we're looking at updates. One of them being affordable housing, which is always a big concern. And there is some movement and some progress.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Sure. Well, it's never as fast as anyone wants it, I don't think. We would love to have more affordable housing now. But there are some exciting things in the works, primarily thanks to the affordable housing millage that residents voted for a few years ago. Recently, City Council voted to purchase 8 duplexes in the 5th Ward and make them permanently affordable.
Now, who owned these duplexes?
Yeah, the Ann Arbor Housing Authority.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And those will be deed restricted, and so they will be affordable forever for people making 60% of the average median income. So that's one thing. We also have a couple of development projects that are ongoing that you're probably familiar with, and these are taking city-owned lots, primarily they're parking lots, and looking at opportunities to build affordable housing. The two that seem to be the most in progress are the ones at Catherine Street and the one that's on the old YMCA lot on 5th Street. The one on Catherine Street has had, I think as the full design is completed, a developer has been identified, which is Avalon Housing, and now they're trying to get the financing together to do that. The one on Catherine Street, I think, is still going through the design process. That's going to have at least 100 units of affordable housing. But it still has a bit of a ways to go through before they get to the next step. So these are long-term efforts that take a while to bear fruit, but looking really promising, I think.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
We just, this being the beginning of the spring, we have a lot to look at with keeping everything nice and spring-like, which means getting rid of a lot of the storm debris from the previous storms. And I'd like to have an update because I know the city had to hire outside help to clear some of it, and I understand you expect it could cost up to $750,000 to do a real complete cleanup. So I'm assuming that's still ongoing.
Yeah, it is. We got our last report on Monday that it's about a quarter of the way completed. And this is just a massive effort. I don't think we really realized the extent of the damage once people started pulling out the branches from their backyards and their front yards. And so it got started pretty early. I mean, one thing that happened was that after the ice storm, we then had a really wet and heavy snowstorm. So that created
slowed everything down.
I think so. It created additional damage and it slowed things down. So things didn't get started quite as quickly as they anticipated. And once they got started, it was pretty clear that it was a huge effort. I think also just by the nature of the debris that people are bringing out, it's not the easiest labor-wise to deal with. So often it's stumps, they have to grind them, pick them up, run them through. That just takes time. So like I said, we're about a quarter of the way through. The good news is that Compost Pickup started a week early.
Right.
And so people can still use their containers to put in, smaller branches. They can package them up in the bags, or they can cut them and kind of bundle them up on the curb because that can be picked up by our compost crew. But the storm crew is it's probably a little bit more than this now, I would assume, about a quarter of the way through the city.
And what is the season for compost pickup?
So we do it all year round now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is an excellent city service, I think. It's one that I think we're really lucky as a community to have. It's weekly, starting last week, and I think that goes through November-ish. I can't remember the exact end date. And then we switch to winter composting, where it's a once-a-month pickup, so less frequent.
So it's just that the timing of the pickup changes, but it's still ongoing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, and in talking about the storm, we also have to talk about DTE, and there's been a lot of discussion about continuing to use DTE for our gas source, but I just wanted to briefly mention that we have a franchise, a 30-year franchise that is ending in 2027.
Yeah.
So it's not that all of a sudden we're going to change the contract or switch to another supplier or anything like that.
Correct.
This is a long-term investigation into what our options are. So could you speak about that, please?
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting development. So as you said, the contract expires in 2027. This gives us an opportunity to negotiate with DTE. I mean, Ann Arbor residents have made it pretty clear that they want sustainable supply of energy, they want it reliable, they want it to be clean. And I think this gives us an opportunity to renegotiate a contract that is more in line with those values, and also ensure that it's a smooth transition. You know, we're not going to leave people in the cold. We want to do this right. And so this is an opportunity for us to see if DTE will come to the table with the community's values.
And is there any misperception the public has that you'd like to clear up about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things that I've seen are people think that we're going to be taking away their gas appliances or suddenly shutting off gas. That is not what is going to happen. You know, I think it's too early to say the specifics of what this might be because this is a negotiation. So we'll see, but that is definitely not on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we come back from our break, we have some more things to talk about.
Okay.
So we'll be back.
Great.
We want to hear from you. So please email us questions at ctn@a2gov.org or tweet us at #CTN in Arbor. We're going to take a break now, and we'll be coming back with more from Ward Talk.
The Ann Arbor Bikeway is a two-way separated bike lane network in the downtown. Separated bike lanes provide cyclists with their own travel lane, separated from vehicular traffic, that uses concrete curb islands and delineators to provide this separation. We will share some important safety information for using the bikeway. Cyclists must come to a complete stop at intersections with stop signs. Cyclists must stop, look both ways or always for traffic, and proceed in the order of arrival. At a four-way stop, the person to the right goes first. And always be aware of pedestrians and crosswalks. They have the right-of-way. At most signalized intersections, cyclists follow the pedestrian signal. Stop when the signal indicates don't walk. Go when the walk symbol is displayed, and proceed with caution when blinking. Be extra cautious of vehicles turning. Your safety is the top priority, even when you have the right-of-way. Where the bikeway crosses Huron Street, cyclists follow the bike signal. Stop when the signal indicates a red bike, and proceed with caution when the bike symbol is yellow. Two-stage turn boxes are another element you will find at signalized intersections. These boxes provide a safe location for cyclists to wait before turning and crossing the street. There are 2 steps to using the turn box. Step 1. When the pedestrian signal displays the walk symbol, proceed to the turn box and position your bike in the direction you want to proceed. Step 2. Proceed through the intersection when the walk symbol is displayed. You will also notice green stripes on the pavement in many locations along the bikeway. These markings indicate a conflict zone, typically a driveway entrance. This will alert people in cars and on bikes to watch for other users. Use extra caution when you see these green markings. Whether you are an experienced cyclist, new to biking, or a family with young children, the Ann Arbor Bikeway provides a safe and comfortable place to ride for people of all ages and abilities.
Hello, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz, and we're talking with Dharma Akmon from Ward 4 for our session in Ward Talk. Dharma, we were just talking about some issues in Ann Arbor, but you did want to do a little bit more discussion about DTE and the whole business of looking forward to the future and having a more sustainable, energy sustainable situation. Yeah. So what would you like to add?
Well, you asked about misconceptions, and one I think is that that there aren't many options besides using natural gas for heating, that there aren't efficient ways, that we live in too cold of a location for that to work. And I guess what I wanted to share is that technology has come a long way with heat pumps and geothermal. And if you think about ways that we might be able to leverage these things on a more municipal level, I think it's really exciting.
So you're saying the actual appliances are now being built more energy friendly?
Yeah, that don't rely on gas.
What it was before.
Yeah, exactly. So that don't rely on gas, and that indeed produce much more energy relative to their consumption than anything else. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we ready for the next topic?
Yeah.
Okay. You are on the Transportation Committee.
I am.
Commission?
Commission.
Yeah. And we haven't really, we've talked about a lot of the transportation changes in relation to having a buildup of more of a community in some certain areas of the city outside of the downtown.
Sure.
So how does that affect the transportation?
Well, let me just start by saying that transportation is really a passion area for me. I, was able to live my adult life. The way I was able to afford it is largely by not having a car. And that's really facilitated by communities that put emphasis on other ways to travel around. I think we're really lucky here in Ann Arbor. We've got a pretty great bus system. We live in a very walkable community and a place that's prioritizing these different mobility options. So that's just a start. I think, I think what you're referencing is the transit-oriented corridor. So having more of a concentration of people, I think, is going to help us with our bus service. So I think we have an excellent bus service, but some of the issues that I hear sometimes are like, it doesn't stop as frequently at my location as I would like to see it, or I have to go downtown to then go back out to where I need to go. So I am hoping that with more concentrated density along these transit corridors, maybe some of that service can be changed. We can rethink that. So that's one thing. One other thing that I'm really excited about is building out our all ages, all abilities bike network. And that's part of our transportation plan that was adopted in 2021. Related to that, we have an exciting development the first week of April, which is that dockless e-bikes that you can share, like the scooters, are coming here. So I think that that's going to be, it's going to really enhance people's mobility options around town. And unlike previous bike sharing programs that we had, they won't have to return them to a particular location.
Right. And I have one question about that. I noticed there are quite a few lanes that are designated for bikes.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're in the middle of the street, sometimes on the right of the street.
Yeah.
Is that still being built up, or have you pretty much finished where you're going to mark those lanes?
No, I think that's still being built up. With respect to like how it's different configurations and in different spaces. One of the challenges I think that we have is we're working with an existing, pretty hardened infrastructure that's been built over decades, and we're trying to work within that to accommodate all of these different modes of transportation. So in some places you'll see just one painted lane, in some places there's a buffered bike lane, in other places there's more protection. But definitely one of the aims in the plan is to build out a complete network so that you can get basically anywhere that you need to get in the city using a facility that really is aimed at making people literally of all ages and all abilities comfortable. I think too often with some of the bike infrastructure that we have, you have to be kind of a brave person. It's probably not something that my mother is going to get on, or not something that you would feel safe putting your kids on. And I think to have this kind of mode shift where people can get around in other ways, we want to facilitate that. And the way to do that is to provide comfortable, safe infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay, and another topic that was of interest to you was the UMich student housing plan.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about that.
Yeah, so this is a pretty
let's
big,
hear about it.
It's a pretty big deal for the city and for the ward because it is in Ward 4. For the city, we know that U of M has been adding a tremendous amount of students to their undergraduate population for years, but they have not added much housing. And so this is really...
Which also put a burden on the houses and the apartments that just regular residents would want to use.
Absolutely. It
Right.
places enormous pressure on our
Right.
local housing market.
Right.
And so that is definitely the picture of our housing crisis that we're experiencing and our affordability crisis. So U of M, they purchased the Fingerly property a number of years
Which
ago.
is a pretty large size piece of land.
It is. and a good deal of it sits within a floodplain. So the good news, maybe bad news for some people, is that they are, with the floodway part of the property, they're moving Elbel Field. So that will be a green space that will be used for the marching band. On the old Elbel Field, they're building a new housing facility. And then, so that's...
How many floors, how high will it be?
When I looked at the drawings, I want to say that it was something like 5 levels. But all in all, I think that their first phase is planned to be something like 2,400 beds. And then the second phase, which is just kind of down the street and adjacent, is another. So we're talking about 4,000 beds in all, which I think is an exciting development.
And what's the time frame for this construction?
That's a good question. So, and I know they've already started some work on the Fingerly. I think it's going to be a couple of years before that is up. And then the other one is kind of in progress. I think they're still buying properties over there so that they can.
So if it's the university property, does that mean it goes off the tax books?
Yeah, it does.
So, I mean, that's less revenue for the city.
Yeah, and that's definitely a shame. The good news about the Fingerly property is it is something that they purchased a number of years ago. So I am happy to see them building housing on it because it's been being used as a parking lot. And housing, I think, is,
Right.
much better than that. So I'm happy that they're doing that with that. But certainly that's a concern. I think it's a balance, though, and I think adding the number of undergraduate students they have, they should be adding the housing, too.
And I just wanted to mention, we have a centennial coming up next year.
Yeah.
Just a little blurb for that. And we're celebrating, it was 1824 Ann Arbor was established. So we have a bicentennial coming up next year. And I know the city is planning a lot of small celebrations throughout the year, not that there'll be one thing. One of the things I wanted to mention to our viewers is to take out their pencils and a piece of paper and start looking at how they can design a new flag for the city of Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting in a plug that that's going to be one of the more enjoyable things to look forward to is, having a flag that really represents Ann Arbor now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a neat thing to do.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about is that we have a riverfront site. This is, to me, big news because we've been looking at this piece of land along the Huron River by Broadway Park that has 14 acres that had been polluted, and it was just nothing for a long time. And now the city actually has funds to clean up the pollution and create what I see as a public recreation and event space, and also have a mixed use of condos, hotel, retail, restaurant. It sounds very exciting.
It does.
The fact that we're talking $17.3 million available to get this all started and established, I'm really excited about that. So what can you tell us?
Well, this is an issue that I don't think the city is very directly involved with, so it's not something that I'm aware of has come to city council, but you're right, it is very exciting. I go down to that area to bike sometimes, or people go to the Cascades, and you're right up against that fencing that's just kind of derelict. So I think it's really exciting that it's going to be cleaned up. It will be an exciting move for recreation, of course, adding more housing, and of course, just the money from the state to actually pull this off, I think is a really exciting development.
What I wanted to mention is the planning of this involves input from a lot of different groups and interests in the city. It's not just something that the city administrators and the city council is determining.
Right.
This is really a big community project.
Yeah, and there's a non-profit board that's been set up to manage this.
I have the Lowertown Riverfront Conservancy is the nonprofit.
Yeah, exactly.
Working with the Roxbury group.
Yeah. And my understanding is it's going to be the first natural area in the city that's going to be run by such a group. So I think that's an exciting model going forward. As you know, we have a lot of parks in the city. Ann Arbor residents love
well
their
over
parks.
100.
Yeah, it's very much more per capita than most locales. We're very lucky, but it's also very expensive to maintain.
You know, and another thought I have is that this just expands. You know, we look at Carytown and the downtown and the university area as the pockets of activity and businesses, stores, restaurants, and this could just add more dimension to what the city has to offer as well.
I agree. It's a great connector between the downtown and lower town. And also one thing that I'm excited about is the event space. You know, I think having space for people to have, you know, musical performances, different types of entertainment and recreation, I think is going to be a huge asset to our community.
Right, right. And we have just a couple of minutes left, so I wanted to ask you, just recently, the council voted to eliminate the insurance board. I'm wondering if you could just explain briefly
Yeah, sure.
what that involved and why it was eliminated and who's going to take over the decision-making.
Yeah,
portion.
So this was a recommendation made by our city attorney's office. She's fairly new, I think maybe only a year or so in the job, and so as she's taken on the new role, she's been looking at, you know, a variety of things to look at. Are they running the way that they should? Are there changes that could be made that would be beneficial? And so we got a recommendation from them that this board's function be mostly a staff function. It's not something that I knew a lot about before I saw this on the agenda because I don't serve on the insurance board.
They're only active when there are situations where a citizen has a case against the city.
Right,
So
small claims.
it kind of comes and goes.
Yeah,
really.
that's my understanding
Yeah.
too. And right now the way it's constituted is it's had, well, previously 2 council members sitting on it. My understanding as I talked to the city attorney's office is that this is highly unusual for this to be a city council, like political elected official action. They looked at all of the municipalities in Michigan and didn't find a single one that had council members on it. So to me, that says like, we can leave this in staff hands. However, I think it's useful to see what kinds of claims people are making against the city because they kind of suggest.
So is there a way to have that recorded
Yeah.
on the website or whatever?
Yep. So it's going to be given to us in a monthly report as part of our council package, and also will be on a website. So we'll be able to see the amounts, what they were for, so we can get a sense of what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the minute we have left, you know, if you could just comment on what it's been like for you to be on the council and working with there's
Yeah.
so many issues. To me, it's so complicated.
Yeah.
So how are you doing with that?
I'm doing great. I mean, it is varied. I have to say, going from campaigning, which I also really enjoyed just talking with people, I am really enjoying the constituent services part of it. And like you said, people reach out about all kinds of things. I mean, they really range from the sidewalk in front of my house to fears about switching to, you know, from gas as a heating source. So there's a lot to come up to speed on, but I have a very curious mind. I like to learn. And so it's been very invigorating and satisfying.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us
Yeah.
and giving us all this important information.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And we want to have you join us for a new episode every month. We want to hear from you, so please email us at ctn@a2gov.org. Attention, Word Talk. You can also follow CTN and ask questions on Twitter at twitter.com/CTN in Arbor. We'll be sure to include your questions. To watch this and all of CTN's program, head online to youtube.com/CTN in Arbor. For Ward Talk, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz. Until next month.